Okay, so what we're going to look at right now is the whole idea of negative space and positive space. So very generally, we could say when we think about positive space would be where an object is. Okay, so it's always good as we look at this ideas, if we just really begin to look at this at a very simple, on a very simple basic level. So we're in Illustrator, I'm in Illustrator right now, and I'm just going to choose a color, any color, up as my fill color. I didn't hit OK, let's go to a blue of sorts. Okay, and there we can see there's my fill color. Now, if I take a shape and I just draw that shape, draw a shape, anywhere. Okay, I could say that where my shapes are is positive shapes, and the absence of these shapes is negative space. Okay? All right, so it's really pretty basic. Now, what we'll find quite a bit, what happens quite a bit is often there's confusion over, we look at figure-ground relationships, a figure-ground relationship. Often there can be confusion as to, okay, what's in front, what's in back, okay? And so really, we could say that, in many ways, talking about figure ground is even another way that we can describe the relationship between positive and negative space, positive and negative space and shapes. Okay, so I'm going to grab it up. I already have my shapes right here. I draw another shape. Okay, I can see that I can fill this area up and up and up. Okay, and again, often, so as we look at this very basic overall design, what we would say is that the negative space right now would be the area that is white, and the positive space would be the area that is these blue shapes. Very basic. Okay, now we come to another image, and if we look at this image right here, this is a photograph. We would definitely say this is kind of shows it a little bit better, and I'm in Photoshop and I've used the eraser tool to erase part of the background. Here is our positive space. Behind it is our negative shape. Okay, so we could take what we have here and we could look at it differently and say, is this interesting? So when we think about using positive and negative space, often when we begin to design, we're very focused on the shapes that we're creating, the design that we're creating, but it is just as important to think about the negative shapes, the shapes that that design is shaping around it. It's just as important to consider negative space. Now, your consideration of negative space probably won't take as much time. Sometimes it does, especially when we're doing something that's very design and actually more abstract. Okay, when we're working with the visual elements of line, shape, color, texture, and value, and we're working with them on a more basic level. Okay, so let's look at this and we can give it a test. Is this a good composition? A composition is how we fill the space. We all have had the experience of taking photographs, and sometimes we know a good picture and a bad picture. Okay, so we could say that a strong design, a strong photograph, there is a focal point. Of course, we give these rules in art, but the creative process and art is not, there are some of it's a science, but it's not a science. We break the rules constantly as artists. So let's look at this picture and see if we think the composition is interesting. I have a selection made here. Photoshop is very much based on selections. I deleted some of the background with the magic eraser tool. I deleted pixels. And then I made a selection with the quick selection tool. I took away from the selection. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fill this selection with a color and see what it looks like. So I come to Edit, Fill, and I'm going to say, okay, let's fill with the foreground color. Okay, there we can see this. All right, now let's inverse our selection. Let's fill the background color. So we can say, what would I do? I could come in and come to select. I'm going to inverse my selection. What that does is it selects the area all around it. And this time I'm going to come to Edit, and I'm going to fill it now with my background color. So in Photoshop, the foreground color is on top, the background color is behind. I'm going to hit OK. Voila, there we have it. All right, so we can ask ourselves the question, is this composition a good composition? Is it not? Actually, maybe when I look at this, I could say, what words would you use to describe this? Let me turn off the selection. Okay, does this have a feeling of unity? Is there a tension? Is this contrast strong? Okay, now if we were to go back here and we could come in and we could say edit, fill, and we could actually fill it with, I think we have white somewhere. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. We want to fill it with white. Okay, now we have higher contrast, right? Is that stronger? Does it give us a different feeling? Okay, if we were to talk about figure ground, when you look at this image, and of course, you've seen this image first when it was, when the image was the hand. So you have a sense of what it looked like. But if we were to go back and switch the black to white and the white to black, figure ground, what comes forward, what recedes, what comes forward, what recedes. That's what we're looking at with figure ground. Now, let's do another experiment with figure ground here. What I could do is I could come back to this fill, okay? And this time I'm going to come into edit, fill, and I'm going to fill this one with white, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come select, I'm going to inverse my selection, and I'm going to come to edit, fill, and this time I am going to fill it with black. Okay. All right, so we can ask ourselves the question again, right? Deselect. And it might be hard for you to see this as it not being, as this shape of the hand not being the figure, not being what's coming forward. But again, figure ground can be confusing sometimes. We don't know what it is that we're looking at. You might look over here and see some kind of monster with his mouth and his eye, okay? And this area. And so who knows what it is that you see. We see the use of contrast. We can also, as we talk about design, when we look at the principles of design and how we arrange a composition, how we arrange a design on an empty sheet of paper, on an empty computer screen, we can look at this idea of it having a sense of unity and a sense of tension. A lot of times when we have black and white next to each other, it does have a sense of tension to it. These colors have high contrast, okay? So it can have this sense of tension. We can have this sense of two figures, two shapes coming up against each other. And then we can have this sense of unity and visual unity. So let's take a look at unity for 1 minute. Okay, so what I have right here that we're taking a look at is, I'm going to hit embed, is an object, this picture of, based on actually a drawing that I did and then a painting that I'm working on. So as we look at this piece, who knows, maybe this has a sense of visual unity. And what gives unity? And we can disagree. There really is not a right answer to this. Well, sometimes we can say when there's repetition. So we have, these pinks and they repeat and they move around the piece. Okay, this can give this sense of unity. Okay, again, then the repetition of these colors in the background as they move throughout the piece. But we could also talk about why this piece has a sense of tension too. Sometimes color palette. And again, tension and unity come by how the artist, how the designer works with the visual elements. The visual elements are line, shape, color, texture, value. We take these visual elements, they are our ingredients that we use as designers. We place these elements on a sheet of paper, on an empty computer screen, and the way we arrange them, we can communicate messages to the viewer. We communicate these messages visually to the viewers. They can, and sometimes they stir emotions in the viewer. Okay, and unity and tension. I always encourage students of design, artists, designers, all of us to trust our instincts. We know more about our visual intelligence than we give ourselves credit for. We've been using our sense of vision, our visual intelligence, really since we were born. So I'll leave it with that. We just did an investigation, a discussion on positive and negative space, figure ground relationship, I address the idea of contrast, unity, and tension. Thank you for listening.